Good morning. This is Dr. Brad at Your Health Reclaimed, where today we get to continue this dynamic talk with Betsy Kudlinski. She's got a really, really unique approach. I thought she was going to be doing animal therapy to try and help people through their trials, but instead of that, I was pleasantly surprised that she's viewing people from their animal natures and trying to bring them back into places of dealing with their childhood traumas and all the things that bring us into our dysfunctional states from more of an animalistic standpoint. And it's not this crude thing, but it's dealing with typical animal natures that are more natural than our own in many instances. So let's jump in and continue this conversation here.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that do that. And even with somatic experiencing, which is the trauma modality that I'm trained in, people use horses for their, with people to help them with their trauma and their nervous system. But I work almost exclusively virtually. I'm opening my practice to be able to work with local people now. But yeah, we just work with people's nervous systems first we learn your nervous system and we figure out where the edges are of where the edges of, I call it a zone of confidence. Yeah, instead of the window of tolerance, you can get activated and you can get uh but if your brain is still working properly, then you can still make good decisions. You can still do things. But and then you can also get really settled. And some people can't get very settled in their nervous system, and some people can and sit quietly on the couch doing nothing. I mean, we don't hear about that very often anymore, of just being able to sit quietly and pet an animal.
But see, that's doing something.
It is doing something.
And if somebody's doing
But a lot of
needlework,
people can't even do that. A lot
yeah.
of people need to have a television on or be looking at something or reading something or playing with something. Like sitting still is almost torture. So,
But if somebody's reading, that's doing something.
sure, that's what I'm
And
saying.
we have all of these
Yeah.
different things that people like to endeavor to accomplish in life. And it's an amazing thing. A lot of those are sedentary, like reading's pretty sedentary, needlework's pretty sedentary, macrame is pretty sedentary, petting an animal is pretty sedentary, but they're all relational. So I wouldn't call those doing nothing.
No, what I mean is most people can't or have a very hard time with their nervous system sitting and doing nothing. Like actually sitting and doing nothing, just sitting quietly. And I don't mean meditating. I don't mean doing it on purpose. I mean just like sitting in a room. A lot of people get itchy. A lot of people just cannot stand that, right? And on the other side of the spectrum, as soon as you start to get agitated or activated or anxious, or as soon as your body starts to get going, some people can't handle that and they go into a different nervous system state. There's a lot of people out there, and frankly, the slice of people that I see are people who know that they have had some version of trauma in their life. And so I see people with a smaller window of tolerance or zone of confidence. So I
Yeah.
don't have data on like the majority of human population, right? But so that's what we do, right? We don't necessarily need a horse to tell us, like, we don't need another nervous system to reflect back to us what where the edges of what we can confidently handle are. We sort that out ourselves. And then we work within that.
Do you have the people you work with, do you have them as an exercise? Just try and sit and do nothing?
While I'm there, yes, sometimes. It's not really sitting and doing nothing. It's often going inside our body and seeing what's up, what we feel in our body. And sometimes that will lead, once somebody has a greater ability for the nervous system to settle really well, we'll get to that place. I do it in my when I see my own practitioner. I'll get really activated and then I'll get settled and I'll get to this place where I'm just sitting there and no thoughts get a hold of me, and I'm not meditating on purpose, but no thoughts get a hold of me. I'm kind of looking around, but nothing's really grabbing me, but I'm present. I'm totally there. I'm totally aware of my surroundings, but I'm fine. I'm just happy to just kind of sit here. And so that's the kind of stuff that we try for, but I don't force. I don't let anything force me, and I don't force my clients to try to sit still and do nothing or to try to get, to stay with that really hard topic. I'm listening to their nervous system. After years and years of watching animals, I can watch a human too, and then we sort out how long can you stay there? How long can you stay with that really hard story? How long can you stay sitting quietly and paying attention to what's going on in your body? The moment that you can't do it anymore, we come away again because there's nothing to be gained in this work, in forcing our body to do something that's not okay and not comfortable. And so when we stay with what's okay, we end up being able to do more and more and more. But when I talk about it as working with neural pathways, right? We've been overriding all of our lives, just like forcing ourselves to do so much more than we're capable of, or forcing ourselves to sit on a meditation cushion for 3 hours when 5 minutes is the best we can actually do. And so we just dissociate, right? We just
Yeah,
dissociate for the rest of the time. Or we force ourselves to I see a lot of people who are just in like a, a deep overwhelm. They've just been pushing themselves to work, to take care of their family, to do all of the things beyond what their nervous system is capable of handling. They need rest, they need pause, they need so that's what has been like the neural pathways are all about overriding what our body is actually up for. And so in my work, it's about figuring out what the nervous system is actually up for and staying within that. And then over
okay.
time, staying within it and honoring the animal that is here in that is you, then you're capable. It's amazing what you're actually capable of without freaking out or dissociating or freezing or flying off the handle.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of that. So I'm trying to wrap my head around, get inside of what you're doing to relate to that. And essentially what you, if I hear you right, you're trying to work with people inside of whatever they're struggling with, but keeping them within their comfort zone so they can relax into it rather than these
Yeah.
confrontational issues.
Yeah. Yeah, because if we just push, then we're just reinforcing how they've lived their lives, right? A lot of people come to me and they're like, "Oh, we just got to do it all today. We can do it all." And I'm like, "Yeah, we could, but would you get anything from it? Maybe
Yeah,
catharsis. That doesn't actually help long term." So, yeah, and I wouldn't call it comfort zone. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, and in a
yeah.
way, it is
It,
staying
it,
within the comfort zone. But what we're doing isn't necessarily comfortable. right? Sometimes it's a lot of tears. Sometimes it's a lot of anger. Sometimes it's a lot of sitting still or fear or being in constant motion, right? So it's not necessarily comfortable, but there's this threshold beyond which your nervous system, your body just kind of shuts down in a way. And so you keep moving and keep doing the thing, but you're not actually present anymore. So it's more like
Detached.
presence zone instead of your comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah, you could tell from my eyes I'm searching for a word that actually
Yeah,
comes to something. I talked to somebody in psychology earlier, and they throw a word out, and I said, the English language is terrible
it is.
because we don't, it doesn't categorize and define things. Like you take um, to know, we've got one word for that. Spanish has two, saber and conocer. Conocer is relational knowing, saber is intellectual knowing. And the two are very, 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 very different. You look at love in a Greek sense, you got four different words. Storge is a family love. Oh, we have eros, which is an intimate love. People think that's sexual love, but intimacy is more than just sexuality. And that one's pretty interesting when you look at it. We have agape, which is just a respect for the fact that God made you, and I'm going to respect you just because God made you. Doesn't mean I have to agree or anything, but I'm going to treat you with value because he made you. And then you have another that's a brotherly love. And when we have things like that, and he kept throwing this term out, I just need to love. And I go, love isn't love until it becomes unconditional. And it was an interesting conversation from something like that. In our language, we just don't have words. We got to stack a whole bunch of them together to get close to what we're trying to mean.
Absolutely. I've been doing this for years, and one of the reasons that I love coming on podcasts is because I like to talk about it and talk with a new person, and maybe we can come up with a new way to talk about this. Because I like to point to other languages exactly like you're saying that have words for entire concepts that we don't have. Like Shoren roku, the forest bathing, has finally like come over here, and then there's a GGE is the Danish word for like this like there's a whole concept of like hominess or comfort or and I know that I'm butchering that completely, right? The work that I do is like that. It's a whole concept that we don't have words for because we as a culture come out of our bodies, right? And the words that we have for being in our body are scientific instead of experiential.
Which is interesting when you look at in the realm of mental health. We
Mhm.
have these diagnostic books called the DSM.
Mhm.
The studies on the DSM always have humored me. They're
Uh-huh.
100% accurate as far as diagnostics go and 100% irrelevant as far as treatment goes. And a lot of
Yeah.
people
Well, if
don't
you look at the
understand that.
DSM as an insurance handbook, like then, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, once we try and label something, we've divorced people from the access to resolve it.
Exactly. Exactly. We diagnose and pathologize, and then we take away the agency to have that change.
Because a diagnosis is divorced from causation.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and what I think the better word for what I see you doing is you're helping people work through things in a place where they're not feeling threatened. I think that's a lot
Yes.
better
Yes.
word. And once you see the threatening hackles and reactions come up, you stop, bring them back into that, not a good term for this, but it's more like the safe place.
Yeah. Yeah. Or safe enough. That's what I'm hoping for, is I can create a container which is safe enough for us to explore hard stuff.
And that place is below the threshold of reactivity.
Yeah. Or hyperreactivity. Yeah. I'm not afraid of reactions. I'm not even afraid of threat responses, as long as we're still here together. Once somebody has lost touch, like lost contact with me, not going to do any good. That's a quote, is trauma happens in relationship, so it has to be healed in relationship. And sometimes it's not relationship with people, sometimes it's relationship with ourselves. Sometimes it's because our experience wasn't validated. Somebody wasn't there when they needed to be there. Sometimes, like it's across the board. But that means that we can do it together.
Interesting. Yeah, that reminds me of a first stage of horse training that seems completely contrary in a whole bunch of senses. But you get a whip out to train a horse to be in your presence at rest. And the whip is to drive them off whenever they're in that response, to get them tired enough where they're begging to come into your presence. And that's where they have rest. And it seems a contrary way to do it, because people see a whip and, oh, you can abuse the animal. No, you're not going to lay a whip on them. It's not the point. That would undo what you're trying to do, is to train them to be right.
Right, right, right. We want join up, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want that relational field. We want that safe enough so that your system, whoever I'm working with, your system, your body, your animal feels safe enough to do hard things. Like when you're training horses, you're going to be asking them to do awkward things that don't make any sense. But if they can trust you, if they can feel safe enough with you, then they'll let you put something weird on their back or shake stuff around or put something in their mouth if that's how you work with horses, right? And they'll still be with you.
Yeah, interesting. Years ago, a friend of mine, his brother had I think it was a stallion, that he told me they had a guy come out and break this horse. And I asked him, so what did he do? And he got on and he bucked the horse out and climbed off, rubbed his nose, and said, there you go. And I said, so that's a broke horse? He goes, yeah. So,
Literally broken. You just
so
broken spirit or
I
whatever.
said, you have a son that's about 12. Is your son safe to go in the corral with that horse? And he goes, looks at me kind of funny. How about your brother? Can your brother go in there safely and rest and do anything he wants with that horse? And he's looking at me kind of funny. He's dumbfounded by what I'm asking. How about you, who spent more time with the horse? Can you go in there and do whatever you want with that horse? And he's just totally confused. I said, I'll tell you what, I've got a stallion that's finally 3. Then I'm going to go through the process of what you said, breaking them. You guys interested? And the day I do that, I'll call you up. You can come on over and you can watch what it really entails. And it's like, wow, yeah, I'd love to do this. So he came over with his brother there at the stallion, and I went through the process in my big corral. It's square, basically square with corners in it. It wasn't a round pen or anything like that. And it was huge too. And I went through the process that I'd already connected with a horse, and it didn't take as much as it would with one that I'd not seen before. But I went through all the process of getting the horse to stand by my side, and I'll get them to do every movement that I would ever want them to do on the ground before I'll ever do it on the air. Once I have my children start to do this, we start having problems. So I'll get them so they can pivot. They plant one leg and pivot the rest of the body around it. Front leg and the rear end goes around it. Rear leg, the front end goes around it. Goes sideways, both ways, quartering forward sideways, quartering backwards sideways, forward, back. Do everything before I think about what's called sacking them out. And then you start touching them with commonly some loose rope is a good place to start. And you do that and you end up with the scariest thing to horse was plastic, like a plastic bag on a stick. And you get them so they do all that and they're pretty bulletproof. Then you put a saddle on them and you don't just jump on top of them. You put weight in the stirrup and then you just let the weight off. You come down, you check back into them. You do that progressively more and more and more. Finally, you get up on one side, you sit down for maybe a second, climb off on the other side. You do that both ways. And people, well, why are you training a horse to climb on the offside? I said, well, what if you're up in the hills? I need to mount your horse. You got to turn it around and do the other way. You do all of these things so that they realize, okay, this person's doing all this stuff, and once they get up on my back, they're not going to stay there forever. I don't have to get rid of them because they just proved to me they're not going to stay there forever. And then you just start doing these gentle things to get them start to move. The same thing you do on the ground. It's completely non-traumatic because you deal with all the triggers, and that's kind of what you're doing with what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good metaphor for what we're doing together. Because we're never going till the horse box. We're just going until like maybe the edge. And then we're easing off and going, hey, we don't have to go there. It's okay. Relax. Take it back down. It's okay. And at the same time, we're exercising the nervous system, right? We're increasing the capacity, just like you're doing, right? You stay in the saddle like a fraction of a second longer each time, right? And eventually we can handle so much more, right? Just like the horse can handle an entire ride, a day's ride, right? Out into the range. And our nervous systems can handle so much more. But if all you've ever done is gotten on the horse and bucked them till they're done, then it's so much like us, you know, sending kids off to school and making them sit still for 6 hours a day, right? And then sending them off to work and working 8 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And then there's additional stressors that many of us have gone through in our lives. You know, you were talking about your own childhood and you were forced to deal with those things, right? And your child animal would have been bucking like crazy, but eventually that horse stops bucking and just stands docilely. Is that because they're okay, or is that because they're in a freeze state or just totally overwhelmed by what happens when a person gets on their back and forces them to do things? It's like,
It's Dr. Brad cutting in again. We're going to cut this one short right here and continue this dynamic conversation with Betsy Kudlinski on the next episode. So tune in then. Thanks.